Geothermal technology. A lot of people don't recognize this, but I've been in this business not for quite 50 years, but I've been in since '85. I used to be 6 foot tall. It's been a tough road. But what's happening right now is people have finally discovered the fact that why not use the energy we already own, the energy you stand on, the energy under your feet. You don't have to go buy it from anyone. You've got it right there. So let me give some housekeeping, because this is one of the things that we do well is confuse people. Just as you're starting to get to know what it is, we change the name. So here's the deal. It's geothermal, ground source, or geoexchange. Feds call it geothermal. I call it geothermal. So whatever those three things are, you're in. If you know what it is, that's it. The other thing is, you'll hear people, even in our business, tell you that they drill wells. Well, they only drill wells if they're using open loops, which is about 4% of the time. The other times, they're all vertical boreholes. And the reason why I make that distinction is the minute you say wells, you're into a whole different category of paperwork. I worked up in Rockford, Illinois, where they outlawed geothermal because someone putting in 27 boreholes told them they were drilling 27 wells. They outlawed it for 6 months. It took me 6 months to change their mind, even though the gentleman who outlawed it told me he was from Oklahoma and he knew exactly what it was. So this is just background. This is not new. Any of this stuff I tell you has been going on for years, but no one's taken notice because we're all concerned with solar or wind and power production. As you said, energy efficiency or power reduction works just as well, right? So this is 36% of the energy, primary energy used in the United States is in buildings. Now, when was the last time you saw a car ad? An advertisement for a car telling you how much energy you can save or how many less miles it takes to run. I see 5 every 15 minutes. When was the last time you saw an ad telling you to save energy in your building? You see very few of them. I don't know why that is. If you look at that total, 40% of the total energy used in that building is for HVAC. That's a pretty high amount. Now, we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions. They said this, they made this statement about 15 years ago. 40% can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40%. This is all background. Once again, because we call it geothermal technology, people get confused. This is not power production. I don't have to find the magma of the earth. This is using the earth's thermal properties to heat and cool your building. That's pretty simple. What do we deliver? We deliver comfort. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to be talking about rheostats and hemoglobins. I'm not going to tell you how they work or how you put them together. I'm going to tell you what you get out of it and what's been done by it. As you see by the Navigant research, that this technology is going to be $17 billion by 2020. Now, I'll tell you why this is growing. We have 4 major manufacturers in the United States. 4. They've been in business for a long, long time. One manufacturer is owned by Bosch, a German company, and the other 3 manufacturers have just been bought by NIBE, a Swedish manufacturer. They spent over $1 billion buying 3 out of 4 of the heat pump manufacturers. Now, think about this. If this technology or this isn't going anywhere, why the hell would anyone buy 3 companies, or for that matter, even 1? So that's showing you where this is going. Once again, this idea has been around a long time, but it just takes time to catch on. One of the things I do is I represent the industry, because as this thing becomes more popular, okay, we have people coming out of the woodwork telling you how qualified they are. This especially, I'm working up in New York, they just put $5 billion in the Clean Energy Fund. Now, I was we were able to do to get away from the renewable portfolio standard where you had to prove whether it was renewable or energy efficient. Now they have the Clean Energy Fund where they've put $5 million from the system benefit charges that every utility payer pays on their bill, and they put it in that fund. Now all you have to do is prove that it saves energy. They don't care whether it's renewable or not renewable or energy efficiency. They care whether or not it saves energy. There's been some really, really, really good projects in New York that I've been involved with. This American Water Project, I talked about loops or boreholes or wells. This is a brand new project because American Water, which is one of the largest privately held water companies in the United States, we're using their water as the vehicle for this school. This school was built in 1957. In 1957, I could have gone to that school, that grade school, which means I'm about 40. But we took away all the expense of drilling boreholes. We took away all the expense of using up the soccer field, or in this case, the research field, or research yard, or recess yard rather, to drill boreholes. We're using American Water's water. We're taking the energy out of that water, running it through a heat exchanger, and then putting it into the school, both heating and cooling. Now, what that does is, like I said to you before, what we're delivering is comfort. That's all. Now, what's this done for the school? It's lowered their utility bills. They have zero gas usage now for heating. They never had cooling. Now they have cooling. As you can see by that fact there, we've lowered their overall energy use by 30,000 BTUs per square foot. But here's the interesting part. They have used that school all summer long for summer school, and they've leased part of the school out to a college during the summer. That is the college which is not air conditioned. Now, St. Patrick's Cathedral, you know, people say, where can you do this? St. Patrick's Cathedral is in the middle of Manhattan. You couldn't find a worse place to do this, okay? They've got 12 or 11 standing column wells 2,000 feet deep around the perimeter of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Now, would I have done that? Absolutely not. It cost $4 million. Okay, I guess they were trying to prove a point, but, you know, you got to use your head. As you said, you know, it doesn't make sense. That does not make sense. But it proves a point. If I can do it in New York, in Manhattan, I can actually do it anywhere, right? Other than a nuclear waste site or a couple other sites. One of the things that we've always talked about is how much energy do you save? So there's been a utility in Oklahoma that actually did a study on this, because what they were doing, they weren't worried about global warming or anything else. They were a co-op that was trying to reduce their peak load because their service area was growing. So they did a study and found out that, well, I should say, and NREL did the study first, and because they're researchers, they came up with this spread of 0.55 to 0.88 kW savings per ton of capacity. Western Farmers did it in 2013, and actually the metrics they captured was 0.55 kW reduction for every installed ton of capacity. Now, if you look at that and you look at what's going on, all the talk about the grid, all the talk about what are we going to do to rebuild it, what I'm doing right now is working with utilities. Because here's the thing. The reason why this thing has not grown faster is because of the loop. The loop is the expensive part of this equation, not the heat pump. But the loop is also guaranteed for 50 years, probably last 100 years. But it's that initial cost that has kept us from not growing as fast as we should. This is what's happening. Utilities, I am now talking to 6 utilities who are actively considering owning loops. Now, I should tell you, I'm an old utility guy. I worked for a utility for 34 years. From 72 on, I never had a utility job. But in 85, they gave me $15 million to do a design-build firm for geothermal. In 1985, I couldn't give this away, so I gave it away. And I owned all the loops. And they paid me. Oh, by the way, all my clients were institutional clients. So there are schools, hospitals, prisons. And by the way, I can sell a prison faster than I can sell a school. Is there something ass backwards about that? I mean, seriously. So what's happening now is, rather than, let me give you an example. A utility in New York, rather than spend $80 million building, rebuilding, or improving a substation, they figured that they can, if they do an aggressive geothermal heat pump projects for large projects, they can save enough peak load that they may not have to rebuild that substation. Now, one small substation was going to cost them $80 million. $80 million. You can put in a lot of loops for $80 million. Plus, you can, we're in Washington, so I'll tell you the other thing about this, but you can put a lot of people to work doing that also. You talked about water and what you're doing. What's happening out west, and it's probably going to be moving this way, but this technology saves dramatic amounts of water. If you think about what a cooling tower does, it evaporates 22 gallons of water per ton per day. So if you have a 1,000-ton cooling tower, you're evaporating 22,000 gallons of water, plus the chemicals, plus the sewer charges, plus this, that, and the other thing. What this does in a closed-loop system is you fill it one time. You fill that loop one time, so you're constantly reusing that water. You're never putting any more water in it. We did a study in Florida. This is what the study of a 300-ton cooling system, geothermal heat pumps versus a water-cooled chiller. If you look at the water savings alone, 4,730,000 gallons. That's in 1 year in a small 150-room hotel. Small 150-room hotel. Think about that if you took a whole complex. That's dramatic. And when you talk about Colorado, in California, where there may be water wars going on down there, this is dramatic. I'm not forgetting the money, but you know, money's money. You can make more money. You can't make more water. Can you do this everywhere? In Texas, we have 250 schools that are geothermal. 250 schools with 15 more that are being planned right now. Believe it or not, there's more geothermal heat pumps in New York, Texas, and Pennsylvania than anywhere else in the United States. Iowa's running pretty close to that also. Now, what does that mean? I'm on the board of directors of the International Geothermal Heat Pump Consortium. Okay? What's happening now is this is becoming popular all over the world. In India, they just nationalized all their land, 5 feet below the ground. All the land in India is nationalized because there's 27 states there. Now, if you recall, back about 4 years ago, there was an 8-day outage in India where everything stopped. And the reason for that was because of air conditioning. The agreement in India was, hey, listen, if we run out, if we're getting close, if I call you, will you turn off your air conditioner? Of course, everybody goes, sure. Well, when they called, nobody answered the phone. So for 8 days, there was no electricity. So for 8 days, we had people stuck in mines. We had stuck in elevators. We got them stuck in, think about that, everywhere. So I land on the 10th day, and I'm supposed to be talking about geothermal and how it can save energy and how it can give you air conditioning comfort. The Prime Minister declared that day that there will be no tax on any geothermal technologies, and then they nationalized the whole ground. So this is what's happening in other places. What's happening here is we've got about 2 million applications. That's in 40 years or 50 years. 2 million. European Union has, as of last December, put in 1 million. Now, this is an American technology. It was invented here. Our headquarters are in Oklahoma State University. Okay? Things like this, I'll tell you, if you look at this, the one thing, we're in D.C., so one of the things that I always talk about, remember, what's a legislator's main job? Does anybody, can anybody tell me? What's their main job? What's a legislator's main job? Republican or Democrat? What's their main job? To get reelected, right. Isn't to do anything else, it's to get reelected. So, a geothermal project, commercial project, touches 22 job classifications. 22. One job, just so everybody knows, we're in D.C., remember, one job equals 15 votes. That's the way you look at a job. So when I go into a legislator's office, because I'm an advocate for geothermal, I don't talk about global warming, I don't talk about anything else, I talk about how many jobs we can create by putting this in, right? Which really gets people thinking. You're in Maryland, right? Maryland just declared the Public Service Commission, or I forget whether it's the PUC or PSC, Public Service Commission, just declared, talked every one of their utilities that they had to reduce their retail sales by 2% a year from now on. All of a sudden I get a call because this is one way to reduce retail sales and not lose your customer. We have a major hospital back here, hospital complex that's using geothermal, right? We're going to, right? Here's where utilities are looking at this. In demand reduction, you keep hearing this. This is now, what we're now moving into, is this is now going to be considered a distributed energy resource, a DER, by utilities. That way they can quantify going in and owning those loops and becoming part of that project. You know, this technology, unlike solar or wind, and there's nothing against solar or wind, but this technology works. I don't need the sun to shine or the wind to blow. It works 24/7, 365 days out of the year. I got to tell you, I was doing a talk about a year ago, and the guy in front of me was a solar guy. And he gets up and he says, remember, solar is 24/7. Now there's 150 people in the audience, and nobody says a word. He says this 4 times. Solar is 24/7. Okay. Well, because I don't sell anything, so I don't have to worry about if I piss anybody off, I get up and I say, just a point here, how do you figure solar is 24/7? He said, the sun always shines. I said, let me give you one word, night. And you hear this ooh from the audience like, oh man, why did you say that to that guy? You're going to hurt his feelings. I don't have to worry about that because I'm sure his feelings, they got funded, so they're okay. I'm not one that wants rebates. I don't want state grants. I want this to stand on its own. What we have now, I told you before, what happened is the reason why this doesn't progress as fast as it should is because of the initial cost, the upfront cost. What we have now is we have people that want to make, I told you when I first started, I owned everything. I made a fortune for the utility. I wish if it was for me, but it wasn't. Because I could not sell it then. I had to give it away. So I gave it away, and I owned everything. And that school or that hospital or that prison paid me every month. And then they figured it out like 5, 7 years later, like, why the hell am I paying him when I can keep it? So they bought it off me, right? Well, now we have people going, hey, that's really a cool idea. So now we have people like Francis Renewable out of Oklahoma. They want to own these loops. We've got people coming into this industry that never thought about this before. We've got all sorts of pipe new pipe manufacturers coming in. There's one down here, Geothermal. They're showing better ways to do this, more efficient ways to do this. I told you the pipe is guaranteed 50 years. It probably lasts 100. Do you know all of our dead presidents are geothermal? Doesn't matter whether they're Republican or Democrat. That's the whole deal. We also have, one of the things, especially if you're a commercial application, when I owned the loops, I had to make sure that that loop went in properly. Otherwise, it takes 2 years for a loop to fail. So in 2 years, when that loop fails and you go looking for Bubba who put it in, Bubba's in Capri somewhere. So what we have now in our industry is we now have inspectors that will work for you if it's an institutional or a commercial project to make sure that that loop goes in properly. So that 2 years from now, you're not saying, man, it's really hot in here. Where the hell is the air conditioner? So that's the kind of stuff that's happening. Our industry is growing by leaps and bounds. Like I said, when you have one company that determines they want to buy 3 out of the 4 manufacturers and spend $1 billion, I'm sure it wasn't because I want to launder $1 billion. They understand that, first of all, in Sweden, we just started a big geothermal chapter in there. We've got it in India, we've got it in 27 countries. And most of them are moving faster than we are here. But the fact is that this technology does a lot. Like I said, 22 job classifications in one project. And 90% of those job classifications are not designers or engineers. They're blue-collar guys, green-collar guys. I heard somebody refer to them as gold-collar guys. I don't know where the hell the collar goes, but I guess it's whatever shirt you're wearing that day. Here's some of the things that are really happening. This is in Philadelphia, where I live and where Randy lives. This is Kensington Kappa High School. And by the way, last week and the week before, Philadelphia School District had to let their students out 3 out of 4 days because they were too hot. No, I'm only kidding. But here's the thing. If you look at this 20-year life cycle, they saved $2,632,000. But here's the real deal. Kensington is in a, let me say, a risky part of Philadelphia, which is a nice way to say it. School incidents, crime, violence down 66%. Truancy, and the truancy is not only students, it's teachers also. So everybody's included in that. I don't know if you call a teacher being absent truant. Does anybody know that? Test scores quadrupled. Graduations 30% to 67%. They're up higher this year. They went to 72%. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we're looking at. The biggest quote, one student said, "I'm poor now, but I'm no longer without hope." This is the kind of stuff we need. We need to put more money into our schools. This is a data center, which is also outside of Philadelphia. People told me that you could never do this in data centers. Howard Alderson of Alderson Engineering proved wrong. Simple payback, 8.62 years in a data center. Now, I'm now talking to Verizon and a couple other large companies about doing this in their data centers. There are a few data centers around. This is what I talked about. Job classification, job certifications, job creations. We do in our industry try to keep the training and certifications because this technology is buried, okay? You can really get in trouble. And by trouble, I mean put it in and leave town. I did a job years ago in Little Rock, Arkansas at a military base. I got called because it was no longer working. So they said the heat pumps don't work. So I had called the manufacturers. We went in, the heat pump was working. Okay, let's look at design. Look at the design. The design looks perfect. I finally wound up uncovering 4 of the loops, cutting off the tops, dropping a fishing line down. It's supposed to be 250-foot loop borehole. It was 100 feet. It was 100 feet in one, 100 feet in another. So he short-looped it by 150 feet. He pocketed $1.5 million in cost. And Bubba was gone. What do you know? That's why we need all these certifications. If you're going to do this, if you want to get into this, or if you're going to use it in your properties, you have to call and find out who you're dealing with, what they've done, get a resume, okay? Get a resume, or I'm going to give you my contact information. I know practically this sounds really arrogant, but I do know practically everybody in the industry. IGPA, which is International Ground Source Heat Pump Association, of which I'm on the board, we do all the training. It's available. Go on the internet. You can find out if the person you're dealing with is certified, qualified, if they've got, and by the way, we have a CGD, Certified Geoexchange Designer for Engineers, which is in partner with AEE. So if you really wanted to get into this, and if you're a design engineer, you can get qualified doing that, which I happen to be the chairman of. This is something I always like to leave people with. Can't solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. That wasn't Donald Trump. That was Albert Einstein.